It says on your website, research also shows that low frequency electromagnetic fields, as emitted by household electrical wiring, can also cause cancer and many other serious diseases. Please explain this.
So, yeah, so it's what I was mentioned previously, that because you think, well, okay, we've got the wiring, and we know, kind of everybody kind of knows, well, electricity goes through wires, and that's how we make things work, so we're all good. Electricity in the wire, yeah? Not quite. The wiring, which is used in Europe, pretty much all over, and which is used in homes in the US, is just this plastic coated wiring, this Romex wiring. And here's the thing, is that the electricity doesn't stay in the wire. The electricity permeates out into the room and into you. And this can even be measured. There are meters that can actually measure the electricity in you. And we can also measure something called body voltage. So there are means of measuring this. And there are three kinds of electricity, or three kinds of EMF, which emanate from this movement of electrons, which is what we call electricity. And that's electric fields, magnetic fields, and dirty electricity. And there's research on all of this. There's quite a lot of research on magnetic fields. And we've known since the late 70s that exposures, we measure magnetic fields in this unit called milligauss or microtesla. But let's just keep it simple, milligauss. And we know that from like 2 milligauss, there is a risk of cancer, leukemia, particularly from 2 milligauss. And we have very clearly in many homes and schools and offices, way more than 2 milligauss. It can be 50 milligauss. It can be 100 milligauss. And so, yeah, there is quite a bit of research on this. Thanks to this 1979 paper, which I mentioned, the Leaper Wertheimer paper. And then we have some research on the electric fields, not quite as much, but then we've got the same kind of, we've got the same kind of, or in the same order anyway, of effects as with the radio frequency microwave radiation, where there's a ton of research. And then we've got this thing called dirty electricity. And that's a little bit colloquial, dirty electricity. The more proper term, correct term, is intermediary frequencies. And so what that means is that they're the frequencies between these low frequencies, so your electrical wiring, actually, you're in the US, I'm in France here, we're on 50 hertz a second. You're on 60 hertz a second. So back and forth 60 times a second. Your cell phone is using these gigahertz frequencies. That's 1 to 2 gigahertz, 1 to 2 billion times a second, back and forth billions of times a second, which is already mind-boggling. Yeah. And the 5G, by the way, is going up way higher. It's going up into 20, 50, maybe 100 gigahertz because of this frequency saturation problem, which I mentioned. So this dirty electricity is in between the two. It's in these intermediary frequencies between the gigahertz, the cell phone kind of frequencies, and the frequencies which electrical wiring is used. And then we've got quite a bit of research on this also. And most of it is Russian research. So the Russians did a lot of research on this, and it appears to be, which kind of came out of their space program. And they learnt about how these frequencies could impact health. And we know that from above 2 kilohertz, and I'm sorry if I'm getting a bit technical, but it's so 2 kilohertz is 2,000 cycles a second, that it goes internal. So what we're saying is, let's just put it really simple, is that all these frequencies impact our bodies in all different ways. And one of the reasons they impact our bodies in different ways is because we're like walking antenna, and we are like, every part of our being is actually like an antenna. So it's like our arms are like an antenna, our fingers are like antennas, our spinal column is like an antenna, but right down to different body parts, different organs, and right down to our DNA. We've got studies which are saying that our DNA is actually a fractal antenna. So we are walking antennas. And that's why these frequencies, these man-made frequencies are impacting us. It's one of the reasons, is because that's how we're built to pick up information. And this information, these frequencies, which are these man-made frequencies, are incredibly harmful. They're like nothing else in nature. We have not evolved to coexist with these man-made frequencies. And that's the problem. And the problem is, that's the problem. And the result of that is quite simply what we're seeing now in terms of all these chronic diseases. And again, I'm not putting everything on the back of EMFs. I'm not saying, every health problem is caused solely by EMFs. But what I can say, and this is just my opinion, is that I cannot actually think of a health problem, health disease, or a health condition which is not impacted by EMFs. That's how profound it is in some shape or form. But yeah, that's how profound this thing is, and that's why it's such an important question.
Do electric cars expose us to more EMFs than regular cars? How much more? What can we do to make an electric car safer?
So electric cars cars actually, all cars give off EMFs, different EMFs. And the more modern cars, we're more into this radio frequency, microwave radiation kind of thing, because everybody's wants to have conversations on their cell phone when they're in the car. So we've got like the Bluetooth activated, and it's often inbuilt. And isn't it great? You just put your phone down, and then they're on loudspeaker, and you're driving along. And like there's laws in France, you're not allowed to use a cell phone when you're driving, but you're allowed to speak via Bluetooth. Now, the thing is with the Bluetooth, it's actually another layer of electromagnetic fields again. So you've got your cell phone, which is going in your car, which is picking up the signal from the cell tower. And then you've got this Bluetooth, which are more man-made frequencies, which are jarring, which are zapping you on top of these cell phone frequencies. And, here's the thing. Here's just a very important point that I need to make, is that even though you think, well, I'm good, cell phones don't bother me, EMFs don't bother me. So it's not because you can't feel these EMFs that they don't bother you. And this is what the research tells us very clearly, is that you might not be able to feel the EMFs, but boy, your cells can feel it. And that's why we need to take action and protect ourselves. So with regard to cars, modern cars, we've got the Bluetooth, we've got cars which are interacting with, like breakdown service or tracking. We've got driverless cars. We've got electric cars. Okay, so we haven't got the thermic engine. So electric cars are a bigger issue. I know of no research, formal studies, peer-reviewed research. Forget it. Who's going to pay for that? That's one of the problems is with the research is the funding. But from what I hear out in the field from building biologists, EMF consultants, then electric cars are a particular concern with regard to dirty electricity, these intermediary frequencies, which I mentioned before, because of these voltages it's given off when the car accelerates and when it brakes. And beyond that, just cars, magnetic fields, if they're steel rim tires, that's giving off a magnetic field. Batteries are giving off electric field, a magnetic field. So there's all kinds of frequencies, as you might imagine, in a car. Is electric worse? Well, what I can say, the reports I have back is, for instance, the Tesla cars actually appear to have lower magnetic fields than many other non-electric cars. But what I can also say is I've had a number of reports from people who are saying, they bought a Tesla, a high-end Tesla, and, they drove it for, week, 2 weeks, and they just could not go near the thing. They started reacting, after a certain time, and they had to sell the car. And that is actually referenced in my book. So it is not this. We don't have total clarity on this question, but again, we can measure this using an EMF meter. So it's not like a laboratory experiment, but that's what, honestly, I recommend that people do, is to if you're, and this is not like top of the list of priorities. The bedroom is actually the top of the list, and I hope we're going to talk about that. But certainly measuring, if you're going, again, I don't use a car a lot. I prefer to walk, bike if I can. But it depends where I'm going, if I'm going I live in France, if I'm going to Spain, for instance, then I'm not going to hop on my bike. I get a car. And so it all depends if you're using a car a lot as to how important it is and, where it should be on your list of priorities.